Hello and welcome to another edition of Luminar Coffee Break. I'm your host, Vanelli. Now, our topic today is how to do creative cropping on a portrait. Now, there's going to be a ton of different ways of doing this. I'll just give you a few of my favorite ones, but keep in mind, it all boils down to you, your creativity, and how you feel. Some people like to crop towards the head. Now, if you don't crop enough, it just looks like you made a mistake. If you crop too much, it looks like they don't have a forehead. So you have to find the balance on how it feels to you. Some people say don't ever crop at the joints. Well, there are some times where, and I'll show you an example, where you can't avoid it. You have to crop there, but you can hide it with other features of the software. You can put a vignette in there, you could darken it, you can move it over, you can erase some parts of it. Either way, we're going to crop the images. You decide what looks best for you. All right? Well, let's get started. So all week long, I've been working with the beautiful Ashley here. So here's the original image. Let me get to the original. And this is what we're going to crop it to. All right? Again, Luminar is doing its thinking. Let it refresh. Almost there, and there we are. All right, so that's what we're going to end up with. Now, this was an actual throwaway shot. This image here. A couple things I didn't like about it. Look at the bottom here. Here, it was just way too bright. I'm not quite sure what was happening with her pinky. When we were growing up as a kid, it's called the Malaki or the Devil's Horn, and so we always stayed away from that as a kid. So there's a lot of things in here that Ashley did phenomenal, and there were some things she didn't that I just personally didn't like. So the only way I could save the image was to do a crop like this, in my opinion. All right? So this is something I want to show you how I got to it. All right? So let me start with, here's the original, or actually we'll start with this one here. That's the JPEG. Here's the RAW file. Let's start with the RAW file. Now, at this point, we can make a decision. Do we crop first, then edit, or do we edit first and then crop? That's entirely up to you. A couple schools of thoughts on this. If you make a mistake, so which I already created the template for us, so we don't have to spend time going over it. I created my look or my style. Now I can do the crop. So if I decide I didn't like the look or style, I can always go back. Or if I didn't like the crop, I can always go back. In this case here, I'm going to start over. And I want to start with the crop first. All right? And in the moment when I get into the editing, I'll show you why. So here we are. Let's come up here to composition. I'm going to flip it to where I want it to be a landscape and not a portrait. I'm going to crop part of her head off. This is killing me, but we're going to fix it. So let's come in really, really tight. I like how it gives us the rules of third. Good. So we can actually see where we're cropping. I like the rows in this area here. Right about there, it looks good. And here we are with our crop. All right, now let's come over back to the template, and I'm going to apply the template that I created earlier. Now, since this lesson is strictly on creative cropping, I didn't want to bog it down with the editing part of it, but I do want to show you how to fix parts of this that has an editing, that the crop couldn't fix, will need editing to solve the problem with. All right, and that right there, in my opinion, is that stinking pinky sticking up. All right, now let's notice a couple things before. Look at this. After, do you see how our edit right down in here brought the attention back to Ashley's face? Now that rose. Let's look at it again. We did put, and let me come over here, edit. I want to make that rose just look a little snappier. So I'm going to add a basic local mask. Here we go. And what we're going to do, what we're going to do is we're going to paint in this area here. So let's see why my basic is not coming up. Interesting. All right. Let me do this. That's a first. All right, let me come over here for a moment and see if it's acting up on that particular image. Edit. And now you can see right here, I did add that creative local mask. Oh, here it is, the basic. All right, so the basic is showing up. Let me see something. Yep. So I'll take over from right here, but here is where the issue I'm running into. And I did an update earlier on this, one of the beta parts of it. So I'm thinking I may have to restart to activate the local masking. But anyways, I have it here for you just to show. Look at this, before and after. So now I'm bringing attention to the rose, and it's keeping it away from the finger area here. Now, here's a really interesting catch. Let me get to it. I tried to erase this finger earlier. All right, so I did try to erase the finger, and it just came out weird. But if we erase the finger, and then, oh, now they came back. Now the basic brushes came back, and then go back and hide it in the shadows, we can get away with it. So let's come back up here to the tools, erase, and I'll come in. I'm adjusting the brush sizes by using the left or right bracket. Here we go. And click erase. Now, there's not enough information there for it to recreate that whole, create the whole hand. So in this case, the erase isn't going to be a perfect erase. I'd have to go in and spend a lot of time with cloning and stamping because that was a screw up. Now, had I have photographed her on this, ran it to a computer during the shoot, I would have noticed that right away. We would have fixed it during the shoot, but I didn't. Now, actually, it did a pretty decent job. Look at that. So it did a really decent job hiding it in the shadows. So I like how they did that. Let's go back to this. Here we go. To my local mask, and it did bring up the basic. All right, here we are. Got it? Now what I want to do is I want to erase or make this a little bit darker. But before I do that, let's bring out some of the brightness in that rose. So I want to paint in, let's increase shadows. Okay, good. Shadows is what we want. Now, I just did a global change, meaning I made the entire image, it affected the entire image. I just want the rose. That's where we're going to come in with a brush, and I want to paint in the effect just on the rose. And there it is. All right. Now, you see how that's going to add more, it's going to add to showing Ashley off and away from her hand. Now, I did go a little excessive on that. So let's come back and dial it back a little bit. And I want to show the mask. Yeah, I hit a little overspray, so let's click erase at 100% opacity. And while I'm at it, I'm going to use my pen here. There we go. Earlier I used the mouse. There. And let's no longer show it. Much better. All right. So we have it right there. And let's see. So now that we have that set, let me check some of the comments. Good. Good. Kathy's asking, yes, I cropped some of the head. Again, we talked about it earlier. I like cropping the head. Others like leaving space. That's entirely up to you. And I did crop that here. I'm going to probably come back and crop it a little bit further, but we'll go through that in a second. Thanks, Kathy. Here, I'll show you. All right, Kathy. So that's something that we'll address in a moment. All right, so now that I have that set, I'm going to make just this a little bit darker. So I'll go to the second brush, or the second one. Which one is it? All right. And let's see if I can add one more. Yep, it's just being real strange. All right. So let me come back. And there's the exposure. Paint. Let's see if that's going to help a little bit. Actually, erase. There we go. All right, there, I got it. All right, so now I'm happy with it. And we went from this to this. Now, here's what's interesting. Let's check, come back up here. Let's see if we can do the crop again. So here we are. And give it a second to refresh. We can. So this is what I was getting at earlier. In the past, once you crop something, like in Photoshop, that's it, it's cropped. You go to the next layer and you do all these cool, incredible things to it, and then Kathy, let's say, is our art director. Kathy comes along and says, what the heck were you thinking, Vanelli? You cropped the head, it looks horrible, I don't like it, fix it. Well, guess what? We would have to go back through and redo all those edits to get to the crop on the bottom and change it. So here, what I love about this is if we decide not to crop as much, we have the option. And I don't have to go back and do any of the editing. So the lesson I wanted to show you here is you could crop at any stage of your editing process and not be locked in to once you crop it, it's permanent. Because remember, Luminar is a non-destructive program, meaning at any point I can undo any of the changes and I always have my original safe. So let's move it up to here. So Kathy, rather it be like this, let's say. So Kathy is art director number 1. Kathy wants it like this. Pat comes along and she's the art director. I'm sorry, Kathy is the assistant. Pat is the art director herself. And she says, what the hell are you doing? What the heck are you doing, Vanelli? Get back to that crop. I liked it. Where you crop part of her head off. Right there. I want it like that. So at any point in the editing process, we can go back and recrop it. All right? Now, you should give me a that's a really cool in the comments on that part of it. Or at least a big thumbs up. All right, now, here's where we have a little issue with Luminar's cropping. Remember, it's a photo editing software. It's not a graphics program like Photoshop. We're not going to add a bunch of pixels. Here's the other image I love of Ashley. Issue I had was I photographed it as a portrait, not as landscaped. So here's where we need to rely on a program like Photoshop or one of the free programs that are out there that can actually change the canvas size. All right? So watch what we're going to do. So from here, if I tried to crop it, all right, if I tried to crop it like we did earlier, that's the farthest I can crop. All right? Well, I want more on the right-hand side. Let's say this is for an ad. I want more on the right-hand side. Well, I can't do that without cutting off the rows or cutting off Ashley. So in this case here, that's not going to work for me. Now I have to use Photoshop or one of those other programs to add more canvas. Now, if I do all my editing here, now I'm acting like the editing is going to take us forever. Boom, done. All right. So this is the power of Luminar. Look how fast I can recreate my image. If I did this first and then went over into Photoshop and expanded the background or expanded my canvas, I'm locked into all these changes. So let's not do that. I'm going to come over, adjustments, and revert to the original. Now, here's a little trick on how I get into Photoshop. Right click, show and explorer. There it is. Right click, and I'm going to tell it to open with Photoshop. There we go. All right, so here we are in Photoshop now. Now, here's the background. I'm going to take the background and bring it down here. Now I released it. Here's where I'm going to take the crop tool. And from here, I'm going to delete the crop pixels. Now, we tried this both ways. I could, at this point, do content aware fill, but it's not going to come out the way we want it. So instead, all I'm going to do is come over here and add more canvas to this. I know I'm not going to use the bottom part. So I'm just going to crop it right about to here. And we're going to continue with a major crop inside Luminar, but I had to do this just to get to this point. All right? Now, let's click on here. And I want to shift backspace to bring up content aware fill. It's not going to be perfect. And that's okay. Now, I made a slight mistake here. Thanks, John. John, always enjoy live programming. Here, this is John. Always enjoy live, but things go wrong. Thank you, John. I saw that out of the corner of my eye, and then I realized I shouldn't have, I'm going to Control Z this. What I really need to do is put it on its own layer for a moment. Actually, you know what, John? Let's see if I can undo it. Redo and redo deselect. Nope, I can't. All right, so traditionally I usually put it on its own layer, but for now, you know what? I'm going to leave it where it is. Go back here. Good, I shouldn't let your comments distracted me on that one, John. But you're right. When you're dealing with live, this is as if you're sitting with me. We're in a coffee shop, and you're asking me all these questions, and I'm sitting with you, and I'm showing you firsthand how this stuff works, all right? And you're going to see the good and the bad with it. So now that I have this set, what I want to do is I'm looking at it, and if I feel parts of this did not do well, which I think Photoshop did absolutely really, really good at bringing it in, I can easily come over here and grab the eyedropper tool, select one of these colors, leave like a low opacity, let's say 10%, and just go around and dab. So I'm just bringing, because what I don't want is a direct, harsh transition. So now we have it set. File. Save. I'm going to save it back to the same folder. It's under complete. I'm going to save it back to the same folder. But what I want to do is just make sure we know which one it is. Ashley fixed. And now I saved it as a PSD back to that original folder. All right? Yes, and while that's doing that, let's pull up a quick question. Couldn't you have to that grayer background from, yes, exactly, Pat, you could. There's a million ways of doing it. I just quickly grabbed that and went with it. Good, I like how you're thinking. So now I'm gonna hide this, and we know where it is. So I'm back in Luminar. And here we are. So I made an album. What I want to do is I want to go to the actual folder. So I'm going to go to the folder in the library, and it should be popping up pretty soon. And here it is. Let's make sure. Oh, there it is. Actually fixed down here. So that was something else I wanted to show you. Luminar is has active directories, meaning you make a change and you drop something into that folder that's already inside Luminar, it'll appear. Now, Lightroom, on the other hand, you put something in a Lightroom folder, you have to re-synchronize it for it to appear. Here, it just automatically comes right back in, which I think is extremely cool. You don't lose your folder, your images, so to speak, as easily. All right, so here we are. We brought her in. I like it. We can start with, like we did earlier, edit. Let's come up here to the cropping, flip it. There we go. And let's say we want it right about there. And there we go. And now let's pretend over here, I'm going to freeform it, is right about there, let's say. Good. So let's say this was for an ad campaign or something. Or let's say if, right about there, let's say if it's for one of the kids graduating high school, and let's say, not this particular image, but let's just say you have them on one side and you want to put writing on the opposite side. That's why we have this negative fill. So now I have it set. Enter. There we go. Cropped it. Now I can come back over. And we apply this. Voila, we're there. However, I want to come back over to edit. And let's hope, where is it? Local masking. All right, now from here, let's see, I have it all set. So what I wanted to try, and I think I need to reboot it. Yep, so my local masking is not popping up, which is fine. And again, if that happens, if it's a weird thing like this happens to you, just reboot, go back in, and everything will be back to normal. But then again, you're not using some of the beta stuff, so you shouldn't have that big of an issue. But the point I'm getting at here is, look what I did now. I was able to bring that canvas and expand that canvas wider, but I did have to use a third-party program to do stuff like that. Because remember, Photoshop or Luminar is designed for us photographers as our digital darkroom. Something like Photoshop is a graphics program designed for graphics and developing graphics like posters or I'm trying to think, well, posters or adding things to or removing things from an image. Here, what we want to do is try to stay as true to the photography side, but there are times where, like in this case here, as a photographer, I'm the one who didn't think how I could have gotten this shot wider. So I have to rely on a tool like Photoshop to repair this image. Now I'm using Luminar to enhance it. All right? So let me move out of this for 1 second. And let's go back in. And if it's not working, if it's not getting where I want it to go, I'll give it one last try here. Yep. Let it render. Oh, there it is. All right, good. All right, here we are. Remember we did the shadows. I'm bringing the shadows out here. However, I am noticing show mask. The mask is probably off. Yep, it is. So I want to come back over here and paint here. And let's see if that enters. Yep. So what I'm going to end up having to do, like I said, is do a quick reboot because right now it is affecting the mask. But what I did earlier was this. I came in and just painted onto the rose and then painted some light behind the subject. All right? So I painted more onto the rose, light onto the subject. Now that's something I would have done once again had I have photographed this, put it on the computer while I was photographing it. I would have said, Vanelli, there's not enough hair, there's not enough separation on her hair. Just stick a little light and kiss, just a little kiss of light, like low power, to make her hair separate from the background. Since I wasn't able to do that, look how quick we're able to do it inside Luminar. All right? Let's check to see if there's any comments. And let me pull those up. Good. All right, thanks, Russell. Russell mentioned you could try GIMP free, and then there's also Affinity Photo. So there you have. Yep, so there's different things. Now, and again, Enrique, personally, like I said, you know, what's a solution for not, let's say me personally, what's a solution for not having to expand the canvas? I should have shot it once here, turned portrait or landscape, backed up, take a couple shots that way, and I've admitted a million times this particular shoot was challenging because we had several different models. Ashley was phenomenal. She was teaching a lot of the models some of the posing. I was off that day. I felt I was off. And in doing though, look at what I did. Now I know a lot of photographers, what's the old saying? The difference between a great photographer and a good photographer is the great photographer never shows you they only show you their best photos. They never show you their bad photos. I'm sorry, I don't have a problem showing you or admitting when I screwed up. In a case like this, I like to show you how I was able to fix that screw up and turn it into something that both Ashley and myself, and I, again, could use this for an ad all the way through. All right? And by the way, someone did ask me about the yellow rose or about the blue rose. So tell people you went to 30 different florists before you found that blue rose. No, that I went to a craft store and actually got a fake rose. Later I found out that yes, you can dye the roses. At one point when we did black roses, we were going to spray paint them. I would rather just grab a fake one, make it look realistic, because with the real ones, sometimes it's hit or miss. So in a case like this, the fake one worked out perfect. If you want to try a real rose, yes, there's a bunch of stuff online. One of our good friends, Malcolm, mentioned blue rose, or moon blue rose, something like that. You type it in, and it'll come up and it'll show you how you can actually dye the rose to make them any color you want. For this particular case, like I said, the rose inspired me to do the photo shoot, just that simple rose, and that's what I came up with. All right? Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you at the next coffee break.